Exiled under Earth's sky, the great hall of the Galactic Empire was filled with silence. Thousands of eyes watched as the two alien sisters stood before the High Council. Zyra, the elder sister, stood tall with sharp red eyes and silver skin that shimmered under the lights. Kale, the younger one, stood close behind her, trembling. Her eyes were soft blue, and her voice was always quiet. They were being punished. They had refused to fight in the Empire's war. The Yalari Empire demanded loyalty and obedience. But Zyra had shouted back. She said no. She said the war was wrong. The punishment? Exile to a distant primitive world, Earth. You will be sent with no weapons, the Emperor declared coldly. No technology. No protection. Survive if you can. Before Zyra could speak again, the floor under them opened. A bright beam of light swallowed them both. Moments later, they crashed through the sky of a strange blue planet. They landed hard in a green field, breaking through tree branches and falling into a muddy ditch. Smoke rose from the small escape pod as birds flew away in fear. Zyra groaned and stood up first. Kyle, are you alive? Kyle slowly sat up, her long white hair covered in mud. Yes, I think so. They looked around. The sky was soft blue. The sun was warm. The air smelled like plants and wet earth. Where are we? Kyle asked. Zyra pressed a broken control panel. We are on Earth, somewhere rural. I can't tell exactly where. Kyle touched the ground. It's quiet, peaceful. Zyra frowned. Don't be fooled. The Empire called these creatures primitive, but that doesn't mean they are kind. Their escape pod was useless. The power core was dead. The weapons bay was empty. They were truly stranded. Come, Zyra said, taking Kale's hand. We need shelter. They walked through trees for hours until the sun began to fall. That's when they found it. A small wooden barn on the edge of a wide field. It looked old, like it hadn't been used in years. Inside, the air was dusty, but dry. There was hay, broken tools, and one soft blanket hanging on a hook. Zyra sniffed the air. No recent humans. We can stay for the night. They curled up in the corner. Zyra stayed awake, holding a sharp metal rod she found outside, just in case. Kale whispered, Do you think we'll be okay? Zyra didn't answer right away. Her eyes watched the barn door. Then she said, We will survive. Like always. Morning came with a soft breeze, but it also brought footsteps. Zyra heard them first. She quickly stood, motioning for Kale to stay hidden. She held the metal rod tight, her muscles ready. The barn door creaked open slowly. A young human man stepped inside. He had short brown hair, worn-out boots, and kind green eyes. He held a small basket of eggs in one hand. He froze when he saw Zyra. Zyra lifted the rod. Stay back. The man raised both hands. Whoa, easy. I didn't know anyone was here. Kale peeked from behind a crate, her big eyes wide with fear. The man looked at both of them. He didn't scream. He didn't run. Instead, he slowly took off his jacket and tossed it to Zyra. It's cold, he said softly. You both look like you've been through something rough. Zyra blinked. You're not afraid of us? He smiled a little. Should I be? Zyra didn't know how to answer. My name's Evan, he said. This is my family's farm. Been abandoned for years, but I come by sometimes to collect eggs. He looked at them again. You two don't belong here, do you? Zyra stayed silent. Kyle stepped forward. We were punished, sent here. Evan looked surprised but not scared. Well, whatever you did, it can't be worse than most of the folks I know. Zyra frowned. We are not like you. I can see that, he said, chuckling. Still, I brought soup in the truck. You're welcome to some. Kale's stomach growled. Zyra still held the rod. Evan stepped back. Look, I'll leave it on the table inside the house. You can take it or not. I won't bother you. He turned and walked away slowly. Kyle looked at Zyra. He was kind. Zira stared at the door. Her grip on the rod loosened. Kindness is often a trick, she whispered. But even she wasn't sure she believed that anymore. As the sun set again, the sisters stood at the edge of the barn. The wind was gentle. The stars were starting to appear. Zira looked up at them. We are far from home, but something about this world feels different, Kyle smiled quietly. Maybe this is where we're meant to be. Far off, the lights from Evan's small house flickered gently, and deep in her heart, Zira felt something strange she hadn't felt in years. Hope, the human. With gentle eyes, Zira didn't sleep that night. She sat near the barn door holding the metal rod tightly, staring at the distant house. Inside, her sister Kale slept peacefully, curled up in a pile of hay. The quiet sounds of crickets filled the night. But Zira's mind wasn't calm. She kept thinking about the human, Evan, the way he looked at them, the way he didn't show fear, and worst of all, the way he gave them his jacket. Humans don't give without wanting something, she whispered to herself. Yet, he didn't ask for anything. When morning came, Kale woke up smiling. I dreamed of food, she said. Rubbing her eyes, Zira handed her a half-eaten root they had found near the stream. Eat this for now. Just then a soft sound caught their attention. Clink, clink. Zira stood, tense. The barn door creaked open, and Evan stepped in, carrying a small pot. The smell hit them before they saw it. Hot stew. I figured you might be hungry, he said, placing the pot down and stepping back. No tricks, no poison, just potatoes and carrots. Kale's eyes lit up. Zira didn't move. Why are you doing this? Evan gave a gentle smile. You looked cold yesterday, hungry too, that's enough reason. Kale ran to the pot and took a bite. Her eyes filled with tears. Real food after days of nothing. Zira still watched Evan. Her muscles were tight, ready to strike. But then, she slowly lowered the rod. You're strange, she said. He shrugged. Been told that before? Over the next few days, Evan returned again and again. He brought food, clean clothes, and even an old mattress from the attic. He never asked questions. He never stayed too long. But each time he came, he smiled the same soft smile. Kale began to talk to him more. She laughed at his jokes, asked about the stars, and even helped him plant seeds in the garden. Zira stayed distant. She watched from the shadows, always silent, always alert. But one evening, something changed. Kyle was gathering flowers near the fence. Evan was showing her how to braid them into a crown. Zira sat alone by the barn when Evan approached slowly and sat a few feet away. You still don't trust me, he said, not looking at her. She didn't respond. I get it, he continued. Your people threw you out. You were treated like tools, not people. And now you're stuck on a strange planet with a guy offering soup and flower tricks. Zira's eyes narrowed. You think you understand me? He looked at her for the first time. No. But I want to. Silence. Then she asked, why? Evan thought for a second. Because most people lie. Most people hurt others for power or pride. But you protected your sister. You chose exile over killing. Zira looked away. Her voice was low. It wasn't bravery. I was just tired of blood. Evany smiled. Sometimes being tired of pain is what makes you human. She turned back slowly. I'm not human. He nodded. You don't have to be. You just have to be kind. That word, kind, echoed in her mind. No one had ever used it to describe her. Later that night, rain poured from the sky. The wind howled through the barn's cracks. Lightning flashed in the distance. Kale hugged the blanket, shivering. Suddenly, the barn doors burst open. Evan stepped in, soaked, holding a toolbox and a smile. Brought some stuff to patch the roof. Zira stared. In this weather? He laughed. I've seen worse. Besides, Can't let you two drown in your sleep. He climbed onto the old beams and began sealing the holes with wooden boards and sealant. Every time the wind pushed hard, he steadied himself like a mountain. Zira watched him, confused. This man, this fragile human, kept showing up. He had no weapons, no reason to help, and still, he stayed. Kale whispered to her. Maybe he was sent to us for a reason. Zira didn't answer, but in her heart something cracked. Not broken, just open. The next morning, the barn was dry. The sun rose over a peaceful field. Kale played with flowers. Evan fixed the water pump. Zira stood quietly looking at the world she had once hated, and for the first time, she wondered if this planet, with all its strangeness, might just be the place where healing begins. The secret within the barn. The days passed gently like soft wind across tall grass. Zira no longer held her metal rod. Kyle no longer woke up shaking. And Evan, he was always nearby, working, smiling, and asking questions that made them think. But peace has a way of hiding danger, and one night that danger knocked quietly from the sky. It was late. The moon hung like a white eye above the hills. The barn was quiet, the sisters asleep, and Evan had gone home hours earlier after fixing a broken water pipe. Zira's ears twitched. A strange hum floated through the air. She sat up quickly, alert. Kale, wake up. Before she could speak, a beam of red light shined through a crack in the wooden wall. It moved slowly, scanning. Zira's eyes widened. No, it was a drone, small, black, and deadly, sent by the Empire. It had found them. She pushed Kyle down. Stay low. The drone hovered just outside the barn, its scanner blinking rapidly, absorbing data. In seconds, it would send a signal back to the Empire's nearest beacon. Zira grabbed a metal rake. It wasn't a weapon, but it was all she had. Then, a loud crack. The drone sparked, twitched, and fell. Jason stood behind it with a long pipe in his hand, breathing hard. You didn't close the side vent, he said. Zira stared in shock. You knew? He nodded, chest heaving. Not everything. But I always suspected you weren't from around here. Kale sat up, eyes wide. You saved us. Evan knelt beside the broken drone. This tech, it's not Earth-made. But I've seen something like it. Zira narrowed her eyes. Where? Evan looked serious now. When I worked at a military base years ago. They had hidden projects, crashed ships, strange machines. I was an engineer back then, until I asked too many questions. Kyle whispered, You were silenced? Evan nodded. Fired. Threatened. That's when I left. Moved out here. Started over. Zira crossed her arms. Why didn't you tell us this before? Because I didn't want to scare you. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. The drone sparked again. Evan quickly ripped out the power cell. If this sent its signal. They know you're here, he said quietly. We don't have much time. Zira knelt beside him. Can you block the signal? Evan frowned. Not block it, but I can send a false one. Kale leaned closer. False? Evan smiled slightly. I can make it say something like, No life found. No trace, just old metal. Zira looked at him amazed. You can do that? I think I can. But I'll need a few hours. And your help. All three moved into the old farmhouse where Evan kept his hidden workshop in the basement. Old screens flickered. Tools were spread across tables and wires hung like vines from the ceiling. I kept all of this. Just in case, he said. Zira worked beside him, her sharp fingers connecting, wires with ease. Kale translated the drone's alien code, using symbols only she understood. Together they did what no soldier could do. They turned fear into strategy. By sunrise, the message was ready. Evan hit send, and the drone blinked once, then went silent. "It's done," he said. "Now we wait." Zira leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "What happens if they don't believe it?" Evan looked at her. "Then they come." Kyle sat beside Zira. "We can run." Zira shook her head. "No, we've been running our whole lives." She looked at Evan. "Thank you. You didn't have to help." He smiled gently. "You were never a threat to me. Just two souls trying to breathe." Zira's eyes softened, just a little. Later that day, Kale found something in the barn, a small box hidden under the floorboards. Inside was an old photo of Evan, a woman, and a child. She brought it to him. He looked at the picture for a long time, silent. "My wife and daughter," he said softly. "They were taken during a test flight." Kyle frowned. "Taken?" Evan nodded. "By the same kind of ship you came in?" Zira felt cold. Evan closed the box gently. "I never blamed the pilots. I blamed the people who gave the orders." Zira reached out hesitantly and placed her hand on his. "I'm sorry," she said. Evan smiled sadly. "I guess we all lost something." Kale looked at both of them. "Maybe that's why we found each other." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by broken tech and burning sunlight, something stronger than fear was born. Trust. They came to take them back. The sky was too quiet. Zira stood in the field near the barn, her eyes locked on the clouds above. Something felt wrong. The birds were gone, the wind had stopped. The air was heavy, like it was holding its breath. Inside the barn, Kyle was humming softly, weaving flower crowns with Evan. She smiled more these days. Her hands no longer shook and her laugh no longer sounded afraid. But Zira couldn't enjoy it. She felt the silence before she saw it. A sharp flash split the sky, and then they came. The ship appeared with no warning. It didn't roar. It didn't scream. It simply arrived like a shadow forming in the light, smooth, black, and shaped like a blade. It hovered just above the fields, its hull covered in glowing red marks. Zira ran to the barn. "They're here." Kyle dropped the flowers. "No, not now." Evan stood quickly. "I'll hide you." But before they could move, a beam of red light struck the ground outside. A circle of fire burned into the grass. 4 alien soldiers stepped through it, tall, armored, and faceless. At the center was a woman with glowing white eyes and armor sharper than stone. "Zira of House Valor," she said coldly. "And Kale, of the same bloodline. By order of the Empire, you are to return. Now." Kale trembled. "I don't want to go back." The soldier stepped forward. "You don't have a choice." Zira stepped in front of her. "She stays." The soldier's eyes narrowed. "You refuse again?" Zira didn't move. "Yes." One of the soldiers raised a weapon. Before he could fire, a blast of dirt and metal knocked him to the ground. Evan had pulled out an old shotgun from behind the barn wall and fired into the air. "Back away," he said, standing firm. "You're not taking them." The commander looked at him amused. "You're protecting aliens?" "They're not just aliens," he said. "They're better than you." Without warning, the lead soldier fired a stun blast. It hit Evan in the chest. He fell instantly. Kale screamed. Zira's eyes burned with rage. She rushed forward, grabbing the fallen soldier's weapon and slamming it into another's faceplate. Sparks flew. The soldier staggered, but she was still outnumbered. The commander raised her hand. "Enough!" Kyle stepped forward, hands shaking, voice small. "Take me." Zira turned. "No!" Kyle looked at her, eyes full of tears. "If I go, they'll stop hurting him. And you. This is my fault." Zira stepped between her and the commander. "No. If one of us leaves, we both lose." The commander aimed her weapon at Zira. "Then you die here." But before she could fire, a loud pulse rang out, one not from their weapons. The drone Evan reprogrammed. It was blinking. It had sent a secondary signal. Zira's eyes widened. "Kale, the beacon!" The red light from the drone shot into the sky, broadcasting a different message than before. This location is infected. Viral energy detected. Quarantine required. Do not approach. The commander froze. Her face twitched. What is this? Zira smiled coldly. We lied to the Empire, just like the Empire lied to us. Suddenly, the ship above them beeped rapidly. Auto recall. Emergency retreat. Quarantine protocol. The soldiers looked confused. The commander shouted, "Hold your positions!" But the ship didn't wait. A bright blue beam pulled them back toward the sky. In seconds, they were gone. The sky was quiet again. Cale ran to Evan's side. Is he? He groaned and opened his eyes. Still here. Cale hugged him tightly, crying into his chest. Zira fell to her knees beside them. Her body shook, but not from fear, this time from relief. They weren't taken. They weren't broken. Not this time. Later that night, as they sat by the fire, Evan spoke softly. That lie you sent, that virus signal, they'll stay away now? Zira nodded. They're too scared to take risks. They'll quarantine Earth for years. Kyle looked at him. But you could have died. He smiled. So could you. She held his hand. Why? Did you help us? He looked at both sisters and said simply, Because you reminded me what it means to feel. Zira looked at the stars. We're not going back, she said. No, Kyle whispered. We're going forward. A bond stronger than orders. The fire crackled quietly inside the old barn. Zira sat alone by the window, her sharp eyes watching the stars. Her hands, still scraped from the earlier fight, rested on her knees. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't afraid. But inside, her heart was at war. Cale slept nearby, her head resting gently on Evan's chest. He had built them a soft bed from hay, blankets, and spare cushions. His arm was wrapped around Cale as if she had always belonged there. Zira couldn't sleep. She had always been the protector, the strong one, the angry one, the leader. But now everything felt different. She had seen Cale cry not from fear, but from love. She had seen Evan, a simple human, risk his life without a weapon more advanced than an old shotgun. She had seen a bond form, quiet, real, and impossible to explain, and she wasn't ready for it. Morning came with golden light pouring through the wooden slats. Kyle sat on the porch with a steaming cup of tea, watching the sunrise. Zira stood behind her. You love him? Kyle nodded without hesitation. Yes. Zira walked over, standing tall. It's dangerous. So is everything, Kale said gently. But this feels right. Zira sighed. The Empire will return one day. Maybe not soon, but they always return. Kyle looked up. Then let them. We'll be ready. Zira studied her little sister. She had changed. The girl who once trembled in the shadows now glowed with quiet strength. You've grown, Zira whispered. Cale smiled. Because for the first time, I feel free. That afternoon, while Cale helped Evan in the garden, Zira wandered deep into the woods. She followed no path. Her mind raced with questions. What was her place now? She wasn't needed to fight. She wasn't needed to protect. Kyle had Evan. But what did Zira have? Hours later, Zira returned and saw something that stopped her heart. Evan was on the ground, bleeding. Kyle screamed. Above them hovered a strange, sleek drone, not like the others. Smaller, more advanced. Zira didn't hesitate. She charged forward, leaped high, and tore the drone out of the sky with her bare hands. It crashed to the ground, sparking wildly. Cale held Evan tightly. He's hurt bad. We need help. Zira dropped to her knees. Let me see. His leg was burned, and his pulse was weak. Zira's voice was sharp. He needs real care, not bandages. Kale looked at her, desperate. What do we do? Zira closed her eyes. The answer hurt. There's one last device, buried under the pod we came in. A med injector. I hid it in case we were caught. Kyle gasped. You never told me. Zira stood. Because it only works once. And I didn't plan to waste it on a human. Kale's face fell. Zira paused, then looked down at Evan. He had protected them. He had bled for them. She turned to Kale. He's not just human anymore. Moments later, Zira returned with a metal case, dusty and dented. She opened it and carefully injected the glowing blue serum into Evan's neck. For a moment, nothing. Then he gasped. His eyes fluttered open. Kyle burst into tears. You're okay. Evan winced. I feel like I got hit by a comet. Zira smirked. Close. Kale turned to her sister. You used the last med injector. Zira shrugged. What good is survival if you're alone? That night, as the stars returned, the three of them sat together under the open sky. Evan rested with his leg bandaged. Kyle leaned on his shoulder. Zira sat beside them, for once not guarding the door. Kyle whispered, Thank you for saving him. Zira looked up. He saved us first. I just returned the favor. Evan chuckled. That makes us even. Zira shook her head. Not even. Connected. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Zira spoke quietly. I was raised to obey, to fight, to win, but here, I've learned that love is not weakness, it's the only strength worth dying for. Kale took her sister's hand, and for the first time in their lives, they were not warriors, not fugitives, not aliens. They were a family, running out of time. It started with a noise, not loud, not sudden, just a quiet hum, like a whisper in the sky. A vibration too soft for machines, but Zira felt it in her bones. She sat up straight, eyes narrowed. Kyle, she said, voice tight. Get Evan inside. Kyle looked up from the garden where she was helping Evan tie vines to a wooden frame. What's wrong? Zira pointed upward. Far in the clouds, something shimmered. A second later, the wind changed. Birds flew away. The earth seemed to tense up beneath their feet. They're coming, Zira said. Kale grabbed Evan, who still walked with a limp, and hurried toward the house. Zira stood alone in the field, fists clenched. She knew that shimmer. It wasn't just a ship, it was a beacon carrier. The Empire hadn't believed the fake virus signal. They were sending a full scan now, and if even one heat trace or energy pulse was found, they'd burn the entire field to ash. Inside the house, Evan powered up an old radio transmitter he had repaired over the weeks. Static filled the room. We have less than an hour, Zira said. Maybe less. Evan tapped a blinking screen. Then we need a way to vanish. Zira stared at the map. If we go underground, they'll send scanners. Kale's eyes lit up. Wait, what about the escape pod? Zira raised an eyebrow. It's broken. Kale nodded quickly. Yes, but the stealth shell, it still works, right? Zira's eyes widened. The cloaking field. Evan grinned. If we can pull it off the pod and build a new shield around the house, it might fool the scans. Zira looked at him. Can you do it? He grabbed his tools. If you two can carry half a ton of alien metal in under 20 minutes, I'll make it fly. The race began. Zira and Kale ran to the forest, where the escape pod had been buried, under vines and dirt. With powerful pulls, they ripped off the curved top of the ship. The metal buzzed with dormant energy. Back at the house, Evan wired cables into solar panels and battery cores. Sparks flew as he shaped the power converter. Zira and Kale returned, carrying the giant metal plate like it was light as paper. Evan didn't even look up. Place it over the roof. Line it up to the edges. Kale climbed the tree beside the house, pulling wires around the top. Zira dug lines into the dirt, planting heat diffusers made from melted drone parts. The clock was ticking. High above, the Empire's beacon ship appeared fully now, black, long, and silent. It didn't fire weapons, instead it opened a belly hatch. Dozens of silver orbs floated down, spreading in all directions. Each orb scanned, pulsed, and sent data back to the ship. Kale looked up. They're here. Evan hit the final switch, A. Loud pulse echoed out. The metal shell around the house shimmered, then disappeared. To the outside world, the house was gone. Nothing remained but open grass and wind. Inside the hidden house, the lights dimmed. Zyra whispered, "Hold still. Don't speak. Don't breathe loud." They sat in silence, hearing only the faint buzz of the cloaking shield. One orb floated just inches from the window. Kale gripped Evan's hand tightly. It scanned, paused, then floated away. Jason let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Did it work? Zyra nodded slowly. For now. Hours passed. The sun moved lower, and finally, the Empire's ship left. The sky cleared. The birds returned. The hum was gone. But the silence afterward felt even heavier. Kyle spoke first. "They'll be back," Zyra agreed. "They're watching, now. Waiting." Evan looked at the blinking lights on the transmitter. "Then maybe it's time we speak back." Zyra tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Evan's eyes narrowed with purpose. "I'm going to send a message, not just to the Empire, but to everyone. Humans, rebels, outcasts, anyone who's ever been hurt by them." Kyle stepped closer. "You think someone will listen?" Evan smiled. "Someone always does." Zyra slowly nodded. "Then let's give them something to believe in." That night under the stars, the three stood together, no longer running, no longer hiding, not just fighting for survival now, but for something bigger, freedom. A new life under the same stars. The stars above looked the same as always. But for Zyra, they no longer felt like prison bars. She stood outside the farmhouse with her arms crossed, watching the sky where the Empire's beacon ship had vanished days ago. There were no drones now, no trackers, no orders, just wind, trees, and a silence that finally felt like peace, not fear. Behind her, the lights from the house glowed softly, like a heartbeat. Inside, Kyle was laughing. Evan sat beside her at the small wooden table, showing her how to write her name in English. She wrote slowly, carefully, each letter crooked but proud. Zyra watched from the doorway. A small smile touched her lips. She had seen many things in her life, battles, betrayal, power, punishment. But this small moment of peace, was rarer than any victory. She stepped inside. Evan looked up. "We're teaching her Earth stuff. She already knows more than me." Kale giggled and held up her paper. "Do I write like a human now?" Zyra looked at it, then nodded. "Better than most humans I've met." They all laughed. It was simple. It was real. Later that night, Zyra and Kyle sat on the roof. Evan had gone to bed early, still healing. The stars stretched above them like an ocean. Kyle leaned her head on Zyra's shoulder. "Do you remember when we landed here? How scared I was." Zyra nodded. "I remember I told you not to trust anyone." Kyle smiled softly. "But we did. And he didn't break that trust." Zyra looked down at the field. The barn, the old escape pod half buried in dirt and leaves. "He gave us more than trust," she said. "He gave us a home." Kyle was quiet for a moment. Then she whispered, "You can stay too." Zyra looked at her, surprised. "You don't have to protect me anymore," Kyle said gently. "You can just be you." Zyra didn't know how to answer that because she didn't know who just Zyra was. She had never been allowed to be that before. The next morning, Evan rolled out an old radio station antenna and set it up on the hill. The parts were mismatched. Some Earth tech, some alien, but the signal was strong. He looked at Zyra. "You ready?" She nodded. They stood before the mic, And for the first time, their voices would go beyond the stars, not as fugitives, but as witnesses. Zyra began. My name is Zira, born of House Velor, former warrior of the Yalari Empire. I speak today, not to threaten or to beg, but to offer truth. Kale stood beside her. We were exiled here, sent to Earth as punishment, but Earth gave us something our world never did. Kindness. Evan leaned into the mic. If you can hear this, and you're running too, there is a place for you. Zira ended with a promise. We are no longer tools, no longer scared. We are not perfect, but we are free. Come find us. Come build something better. They sent the message into deep space, not knowing who would hear it, but believing someone. What weeks passed, the fields turned green again. Kyle planted flowers along the fence. Evan fixed the porch. Zira rebuilt the pod, turning it into a lookout tower in case others arrived. One day, as the sun was setting, a strange light blinked in the western sky. Not a weapon, not a threat, just a small craft, circling. Zira climbed the tower and smiled. Looks like we're not alone anymore. That night by the fire, Zira sat beside Evan and Kale. She looked up at the sky she once hated. Same stars, same galaxy. But now, she had a name of her own, a path of her choosing. A family not by blood but by choice. She reached out and took Kale's hand on one side, Evan's on the other, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a warrior. She felt like a person, living, breathing, free.